Hey, welcome to the Faith and Life podcast again. Here we are. My name is Mike Weaver, pastor at St. Luke Lutheran Church in Columbus, Ohio. And as always, with me is,
Greg Osborne. I'm the youth pastor here at St. Luke, Columbus.
yep. So we're going to dig into a conversation today about a conference we went to last week with our staff.
Yeah.
It used to be called the Orange Conference, but this year they changed it to the Church Conference.
Church conference.
Church Conference.
It's like, all right, what is it? We are a conference. Yep. Okay. We're dealing with churches. Done. All right. The
Yeah.
quickest naming of a meeting for a conference ever.
I can imagine at that meeting there were ideas floating around, and finally just simply said, let's just call it church conference. Call it what it is. Church
It
conference.
it reminds me of that Mitch Hedberg joke. He's like talking about DoubleTree. He's like the executives at DoubleTree are like, should we call our hotel Singletree? No. How about DoubleTree? Yep, that's it. We're done. And the way he just delivers it, it's so good. Uh,
That's great. That's great. Yeah, so we'll talk about that today. There's always inspiring thoughts and information we get gleaned from these conferences. The staff's been going to Orange, now the church conference, for a number of years.
yeah.
And so you can go back to other years around this time, 24, 25, 23,
At
and you,
least when we started the podcast, we've talked about conference ever since. So,
yeah. So you can, if you're interested, go back to our archives. But so before we get there, I have an open question for us to answer. The question is, what's a big challenge you've recently taken on?
ooh,
A big challenge.
ooh, that's a good one.
Need to think about it for a
I
second.
do. Give you jump into this one.
So I do have a big challenge. And now I'm not sharing my big challenge because of the question. I am. That's a weird way to say it. I found that question today and I was like, oh, well, that's weird because I have a big challenge. So I didn't think about what I wanted to share and then formed the question. The question found me. Anyway,
Hmm.
here's the deal. I ran a 5K on Saturday morning in Cincinnati, the Flying Pig 5K. And so the big challenge for me is running.
Yeah.
I've never identified myself as a runner,
Mm.
a long distance runner. I ran track, I ran sprints. I never ran long distance, nothing more than a quarter mile. And so just since last year, I started running longer. So Saturday morning, 3.1 miles. And so that's a big challenge for me. For some people that run a lot, they're like 3.1 miles, that's warm up, you know. For me, that's like a marathon. It's that's a struggle for me. But I'm glad to do it. And I'm always glad to have run. I don't like to run.
Yes.
So
It's the feeling afterwards, you're like, I'm glad I did it, but it's always the build up before. I remember when I was in my running phase, and it was the same thing. It was like, do I want to? No. And then afterwards, I was glad I did it. And so like you're able to like keep on that for couple, once you get into that rhythm, like you know that what it's gonna feel like afterwards. But man, to get there, it's tough sometimes.
it is, it's a mental game. And we do it. I do it with one of our boys, Nathan, who runs a lot, way a lot more. He's now done a couple half marathons. And so literally for him, 3.1 is like, okay. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
whatever.
Whatever.
So that's my big challenge. That's my big
Oh, so Mike's like, all right, how do I tell people I ran a marathon today? Let's ask this question. Big challenge for me. I mean, Mike, you know this. I feel like we haven't shared too much with people in the church, but so you'll get a little insight then. But I'm doing a discipleship class through the Fuller Institute,
Yep.
and we're coming up on the end of the class, and so like we got a big class project for me, and so like just of like making sure all the work is done, doing all the extra, just the extra of a class on top of everything else, doing full-time job, full-time dad, all these other things. And so like it's been a great experience, but like there's always when you have that one thing where it's also one of those things where you're like, oh, I need to get to the work stuff this week. That can be next week, and then next week becomes the next week. And so it's like yeah, I got to get some of my workbooks done. But so like that's for me is a challenge of, it's like it's been a good challenge and experience of learning knowledge, but also trying to figure out when you have something else that's thrown into the mix that you don't usually do, how do you figure out work-life balance on that, especially when it's still work. So it's work-work balance, I guess. But
Yeah.
but it's been
That's
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think you're right. Whatever it be, a class, running, name the challenge. If it's there are positives that come out of the
Yeah.
challenges. It's worth digging into. Um, if they're challenges we choose.
Right.
Sometimes there are challenges that choose us that are just awful, and we hope to learn something from them. But that's a different conversation for a different time.
Mm.
But yeah. All right, so we're going to talk about the church conference and things we gleaned, insights, inspirations, and so on. Um, and we went to different workshops. We heard generally the same speakers
Yep.
from the bigger gatherings, but then we had different workshops. So, hey, Greg, where do you want to start? What about,
Um,
yeah.
I was trying to think of where I wanted to start. Because it is interesting, right? Like we have the main sessions that we all go to. And then you senior leaders have your bougie, special secluded location where you guys get wined and dined while us children's and youth pastors get the scraps. But
No, we whine a lot. We don't get wine. We whine.
But one of the speakers so like we went to a morning session when you were at a different session, and they were talking about, reaching how do we reach our students and our kids. And this was this idea. He was a guy from he's a director of Awana. So if you're familiar with the Awanas program, a lot of churches I know around the Wesleyan denomination use that program to kind of like feed into like, oh, you memorize a Bible verse, you get a patch on your vest, like Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts for like church, I guess. But it was cool to kind of see his like just his heart and his passion for of he talked about how he was a sneakerhead and he'd gotten these Jordans and they were basically fake Jordans. And they were talking about how what happens is with a lot of these, like they use the same blueprint of for the in the factories and things like this, and like people like sneak in basically after hours and make like fake Jordans with everything that's there, but they're just like there's just something off about them that then they sell like that. And so he's talking about how that relates to us in our world of like we have these similar blueprints and the world's saying like this and we're saying this and it can be just slightly off. And I was just like it was an interesting thing of like how oftentimes we're very similar in what we're thinking, but just the slightest detail can take you and can be completely make something that should be worth a lot worthless. And I was like, wow, it was just an interesting mindset to think about.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, that ties into later in that evening
Hmm.
that I wanted to share was, we all heard John Acuff speak,
Oh, so
and
good.
so good. I mean, John Acuff is a strong, strong speaker, great writer. He's always at this conference, and he talked about how, in a similar way, uh, we create smaller and smaller boxes,
Hmm.
like what from the original intent, and we box ourselves in this tiny little box. Um, and I'm trying to think of the example he used. Uh,
Well, yeah, because he had like the illustration of the box, and it's like you have the
so
outer structure of the box, and then it goes down in leadership basically when it was talking about businesses
yeah,
and smaller till like that you don't want to upset leadership and like go outside of the box that they've set, and then the person underneath
yeah,
them sets a smaller box, and we do that kind of with God.
yeah. So we just kind of like we hedge our bets and play it safe, and we create these knockoff to
Yeah.
the gentleman's uh, dreams that are they're not as big as the original intent. And he ended his conversation with the audience like, don't wait, whether you're 20s and your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s, don't wait, just go for it and break out of the box and make something happen,
Yeah.
an idea. And I thought that was really, really inspiring and helpful. especially the visual of the box, which is tough to replicate on the podcast, but it's worthwhile to think about.
Yeah, that excuse me, that always resonates with me, like that talk of just like I think oftentimes in our life we put up these own roadblocks for us and like this will happen later, right? Like or it's too late. And he's just kind of saying this like, no, just do it. Like
Mhm.
you're 30, do it. You're 40, just do it. Like I was just like, man, don't wait. I was like, okay. It's like don't wait for something better, like create it. I was just like, that is always like that's encouraging, right? Like it's like, man, I really like that.
There is I just listened to a podcast this morning. It's a 10-minute thing on a daily basis. And the guy today said, um, the world is not waiting for you to be ready.
Mm,
Just go. His point is just go. It's kind of similar to John Acuff. Just do it, you know? And and as John Acuff pointed out, and it's a phrase I've heard before, but it's worth repeating. He said, the growing is in the going. You
yeah,
know, when we go, then we learn a lot and we grow along the way, but we can't really grow if we're not going. And I think that's really, really important to remember
yeah.
as well.
I it I heard one of the speakers at some point, it might have been in a session, but he kind of talked about like, that's one of the important things of just going to church of like in the midst of like even if you're not feeling it, because God's bigger than anything that we're dealing with anyways and can handle it. But the idea of so oftentimes we wait like, well, I'm not ready enough, so I'm not a good enough Christian, so I can't serve in this ministry or this ministry. And it's like the Bible is filled with story after story of people that were like pulled out of, they're like, God's like, go, do it, just go. And I think it's oftentimes we try to like, I have to have all my ducks in a row before I can do A, B, or C. And this is one of those talks where it's like, no, you just do it, go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And the conference ended with a guy, Charles Metcalf,
Mm,
and who's a pastor at Transformation Church, I think in Oklahoma.
yeah,
If
yeah, yep.
I had not heard this guy speak before, but I really, really liked him. Just super, uh, just really inspiring and encouraging. And he talked about how our life is really governed by our fears, not our dreams. We
Mhm.
like to think that our lives are governed by our dreams, that are, our lives are as big as our dreams. But he said, really, our lives are only as big as our fears. And our fears are that box, and right, that keeps us. And he didn't reference John Acuff, but it's a similar sentiment. And I really appreciated what he said and just that clarity and how truthful it is. But then he talked about how anxiety within that fear, we feel it. And it's not about to get rid of the anxiety, it's not about doing more things. It's about being a child
Mhm.
of God. And that how he talks about this family where his family where of his four kids, his oldest son would come to him and say, Dad, we've got this drippy faucet. And he's like, okay. And he's like, the son's all worried about this dripping
Right.
faucet. What are we going to do about it? And he goes, sometimes I'll say to him, if he comes with me, this anxiety, what do you think we should do about it, son? And then he's like, oh my gosh. And like dad doesn't know.
Yeah.
But what he has to remind his son is that's not your job to fix it. It's my job to fix it. And you just be my son and just trust me. I got this. And he made a connection between that and like just the complexity of life and the things we deal with. And there are things that are beyond our control and and that get us really anxious. And he said, it's in those times where we don't need to do anything. We just need to trust
Hmm.
that God's got this. As a child does, we just trust that God has it under control.
Yeah.
And there's a peace that comes with that. I really, really appreciated
Well,
it.
it's funny because literally, like, we were joking about this later that day, though. We're in the airport and we're like, we're not going to
Yeah.
catch our flight. And one of us is just like, hey, we're a child of God. Remember, we just need to this is dad problem, not our problem.
Yeah.
And there was nothing we could do about it. And sure enough, it got taken care of.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I also I felt so bad for the cameraman when that preacher was preaching. As someone who does live tech at the church, our church, I'm like, whoo, there that dude was all over the
He
stage,
was.
just bouncing, boom, 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 boom. I was like, man, that's reminded me when I had to tell Pastor Steve, like, here's your box for the
Yeah.
cameras. Like, you gotta stay in this box. I was like, I can't keep up with you with all these cameras.
Yeah.
He was
That would be
he
my
was making them work.
one.
He was making them work.
He was. He was. I mean, it was his energy. He's
Yeah.
really passionate, and that there's I don't want to take that away from him. But if there was one thought I would have from him as a preacher to preacher, and it would be just like that, find that place to walk around in
Find your box.
or plant yourself, and it'll be even more powerful
Well,
because
because I think of all the older people in the congregation
yeah,
because that was me early on in mine. I'm like bam, 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 bam.
yeah.
They're like your message was really good, but can you please just stand still? So
Yeah.
I was like, man, Charles is my dude. Like, I was like, we were cut from the same cloth from there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good stuff. What else did you pick up?
Yeah, one of the ones I liked it too. They talked about this idea of story when our faith of you have creation, fall, redemption, restoration. And oftentimes we in the church tell the fall and redemption story. We only tell half the story.
Hmm.
And we don't tell the full story of the creation, the identity of who we are, the restoration of what God does. And to know sometimes of like if you to know about the fall, to know about the redemption, you still need to know the creation aspect. You need to know then the end results. And it reminded me often of like how often I will get an idea and I'm like, I'm gonna run with this. Like, yeah, let's do this. But I forget to then bring people onto the full idea of the story of like why I got to where I got to. And they kind of talked about that and how you do that in church as well, with like, okay, well, why do we need to get to this spot here? Because if kids don't understand who they're created and made like that, they're not the fall is not going to be as impactful and stuff. And so like the idea of just stop telling like make sure we tell the full story. And I was just like, man, that's a brilliant thing.
It is. It reminds me of something, the time I've been at St. Luke for 7 years when Steve was here and Aaron was here. I remember staff meetings years ago being told, like, just the conversation around we need to bring people up to where we are
Hmm.
because we're so in it
Yeah.
on a daily that a lot of people just don't have the insight and the why and all those things that you just talked about.
Yeah.
And so to get people on board, you've really got to just slow it down and back up and then bring people along before you go, okay, now let's go. Exactly what you're saying. That's really important.
Yeah, because I think I often do that, and like we've done that of like we've been so in the weeds of something, right? Right, just
Mhm.
living there in that space all the time, and being at the church so long here at St. Luke, like I've caught myself sometimes going like, "Oh, the rest of the staff might not know about this. They don't know the whole story." And like I'm already here because I know what happened here and here. I'm like, I gotta make sure we tell the full story.
Yeah. Yeah. We just assume people know,
Yeah.
but we can't make that assumption.
And
Yeah.
and I think that's helpful for me in like just in life in general as we're looking at like we don't know the full story of people's lives and things. And so like when we make these like snap decisions and judgments off of someone's actions of this glimpse that we see of man, we don't know their full story and how do we get to know that kind of story too. So,
Yeah. That's great. That's great. One of the workshops for senior leaders was about leading through difficult conversations. Yeah, boy. It was good. So really, really good. Terry Scalzitti, pastor from Myrtle Beach, taught about this. And there's so much in that whether you're a leader in the church or leader in society or in business or teacher, it doesn't matter. We are all faced with a time where we have to have a difficult conversation with
mhm.
somebody or a group of people, and how the leader handles it is really important. So he talked about entering with intention, being thoughtful, like before you go into the conversation. like what do you hope to accomplish in this conversation? What what is the best time for this to happen? Where is the best time place for this to happen? And so on. Just some pre-work that goes into it so you can control what you can control. Obviously, within any conversation, it goes, left and right field, but
Right.
um, you do a lot of pre-work. But then really, I felt that was really important. He said, remember the 15-second rule.
Mm,
So it said, so if you're in that conversation, just go for it. He's like, just tell folks this is not going to be a pleasant conversation. Just from the out of the gate.
hmm
Don't, especially if it's like, it's if you're in this conversation because it's going to be difficult and just got to name it.
Right.
Because otherwise, what'll happen is if you just start with this, all these pleasantries, people get caught off guard,
Yeah.
especially if they don't know it's going to be a difficult conversation. They're not expecting this. Um, so he said it's always been helpful in his mind, and when he's done this, to just eliminate the distraction of
Mm,
all these other things. It's going to be uncomfortable. Just name it and just make that expectation, and then you can always go better from there.
right.
But clarity is kindness in that
Yeah.
way, right? You're just creating a kind. Doesn't have to be difficult. Doesn't mean an unpleasant. Doesn't mean it's going to be, people are going to yell and scream and all. That's not the issue. It's more about it's going to be could be potentially heavy
Yeah.
and difficult to hear. So
No, it makes sense because like I've looked back at times I've had difficult conversations and you know, to name that up front, rather than like, oh, hey, how was your day? Like all the
yeah,
pleasantries, the small talk, and then you're just like, oh, what? Like, because then that just seems so fake moving, like, and you're like,
yep,
well, what? Like now you want to have this like, and so like to just be like, hey, this isn't gonna be like, I don't like these conversations, but like we got to have this, like, let's figure this out, and like I like that. That's a good reminder.
yeah, and that let's figure this out is an important point as well. I'm trying to think if he pointed this out or I've done some work in difficult conversations because I've had to do them. And one of the things that I was told, which does really help, is in that first 15 seconds, just naming it, but
Hmm
also saying, "Hey, I want to leave this conversation with a mutual a solution that works for both of us."
Right.
So, can we agree that we're going to work on this together, whatever this is?
Right.
Now, and if you get that agreement from the get-go, now all of a sudden, okay, we are going to have a conversation. It's going to be unpleasant, but we're going to work on this as a cooperative thing.
It's a there's commonality, right? There's
Yeah,
there's there's this idea of, hey, look, very often when we have these difficult conversations, I think we can get to I, you, it's we're pitted
yep,
against each other. And if by stating that too at the beginning, like we'd like to find a mutual agreement in some way and see how like that brings it off of head to head and side to side, I think is where you get to. And I think that helps also then because it's not a fake like, hey, like, but it is like we're having this conversation hopefully from the mindset of we this is important to both of us and we need to figure this out together so we can move forward and do whatever.
yep,
Um,
yep,
so that's
yep.
good stuff.
It's good stuff. Yep, yep. So, Greg, we need to have a difficult conversation.
Hey, I love that you went there because I literally was gonna say, hey, as soon as you were wrapping up, hey Mike, by the way, don't forget we have that meeting. It's not gonna be pleasant, but we need to just have it. So I love that we're both there.
Right, right.
So
Good stuff. Well, we'll do part two next week.